Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Balderas and I'm so happy you're here. Oh my goodness, look what I found. Charles Merritt.
I just happen to be wandering around.
Actually, I came home and he was here. So,
Is that a good thing?
well, yeah, I
Okay.
guess, Simon, when he's home alone, he calls Charles over, they hang out. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're always here because you're recording
That's true.
for our website.
Yeah, this is true.
Anyway, so I'm very happy to have my good friend Charles Merritt here. He and I were saying that we have not done an episode in 2025 yet.
Yes.
The day.
It's been a while.
I know.
It's been a long while.
Sorry.
That's-
I've been getting, lots of guests being sent to me, so I'm just really happy that you're here today. But before we get to our episode today, I just wanted to say a couple of things. So Charles, I'm not going to do my intro that I do about Charles every time he's on. But here he is. So for all of my new listeners who don't know Charles Merritt, he is an educator at a high school at our church. And not only that, but he is on the Fresh Catholic team. And it's a small but mighty team, as I
Absolutely.
say.
Yes.
And if you aren't aware of this, if you go to freshcatholic.com, we have Charles Merritt is all over our website. He does many series and he's done some Bible studies, he's done some one-offs, he's been a guest of mine. So he's very present on the Fresh Catholic website. And summer's coming. Now people have more time on their hands.
Yes.
And I feel like, if you want to learn more about Catholicism, go to freshcatholic.com, listen to Charles Merritt, watch Charles Merritt. They're very well done
Oh, good.
episodes. So,
Well,
so that's really
Thank
good.
you.
And then one thing that I guess I didn't realize on my own website
Okay.
is that Charles also does a weekly podcast at St. Bonaventure
Yes.
High School.
Yes.
And he does it on the weekly gospel, which I listen to every week religiously, know how to detect it.
Yes. Yes.
But what he does is he breaks down the gospel so that when you go to Mass on Sunday, you understand what's going to be happening. That is also on our website.
It is.
Who knew?
Yes.
I didn't know. So I'm just going to throw that out there that you all should know that. And in order to find it, you go to the courses tab. You'll see Charles Merritt's bio. And there's a thing that says Charles episode or Charles
Podcasts.
podcast.
Okay.
So that's there too. We have so many things that
We really do.
Catholic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's that.
Something for everybody.
That's that.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to be talking about curious things Jesus said in the Bible, or as I like to call it, Jesus, what you talking about?
There you go. I think we just dated ourselves. Well, she's turning red. I don't know if you picked this up on the camera, but she's bright red. She's almost as red as my shirt.
I totally pulled that up.
You didn't know you're a trained professional. And I'm just trying to keep up here. I'm just trying to keep my head above water.
Okay, so Jesus, there's some pretty curious things in the Bible.
He did. Yes.
Okay, and so you have pulled together some questions, but I'm going to ask them to
Okay.
you because I do think that obviously we know Jesus had many wise things to say, but we also know that Jesus mainly, correct me if I'm wrong, but mainly spoke in parables because he was trying to explain things to these guys were simple guys.
Yeah.
They were fishermen, they were workers.
Right.
These were just normal
Shepherds, farm
guys. Yeah, they weren't like kings and
Right.
no
Or theologians or
yeah,
scholars.
they weren't super educated men, to be honest.
Right.
So he would speak to them in parables.
Correct.
But then there's things where you'll be listening to the gospel and you'll think, again, what you
Yeah,
talking about,
yeah.
Jesus?
Yeah.
So I would like you to explain these to us.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So and I don't know where in the Bible these are. I'm just asked. So maybe once I ask you the question, you can say where
Okay.
they're from.
Sure.
But one of them is when Jesus, and I'm paraphrasing all these, everybody, so don't quote me. Charles is going to be more accurate. I'm just asking the question. Okay. When Jesus says, hate your father, mother, brother, sister, wife, and children.
Right.
That's a big one because we don't think of Jesus to use the word hate.
No.
and let alone promote trying to hate others. So because we know Jesus is a good and loving person and God, what's he saying there?
Yeah, this is one of the ones where it sounds un-Jesus like,
Yes.
where you read this and you go, "This doesn't sound like the Jesus I know."
Right.
And so what's going on here? Is it how should I really understand what he's saying? Yeah, so when he says, hate your father, mother, brother, sister, wife, children, is Jesus a hater? Using modern parlance. And obviously the question is no. We find this in Luke chapter 14, verses 26 to 30, where he's talking to the crowds and he's saying, in order to be a disciple of mine, in order to be worthy of me, and then he launches into it, you have to hate your mother, father, sister, brother, etc. And the question becomes, really, Jesus? Hate? Because hate is such a strong word. In fact, the series that we just finished filming that'll be released within, I guess, the next couple of weeks on the 10 Commandments, the commandment, thou shalt not kill, a subcomponent of that is anger and hatred. So why would Jesus be condoning something that's against one of the very 10 Commandments? And
Especially since he is always promoting love.
yeah,
Love one another, love, love, love. And then all of a sudden he's using the complete opposite, very strong word.
yeah, because hate is a strong word. And Jesus, one of his titles is the Prince of Peace.
Right.
So why is he talking hate? And the key for us is to understand back then what the word hate, the vein in which he was using hate. And the vein he was using it was not the hatred that we use in modern parlance. It was to hate somebody was to love them less than somebody else. So when he says you have to hate your mother, and in order to be worthy of me, you have to hate your mother, father, brother, sister. He's basically saying in order to be worthy of me, you have to love them less than you love me.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be first.
Right.
Okay. So he's not telling the people to hate their own family or to hate others. He's telling them, in fact, to love them, but to love them less than they love him, because he's got to be the center. He's got to be number one.
Right.
So the key to us understanding what Jesus is saying is to not ascribe our modern day understanding of hate, the word, but more in the case of loving less. Then it makes a lot more sense. Then it sounds a lot more Jesus-like.
Right.
And that's what he's
Also,
talking about.
that's kind of how it is in the Bible also. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the words that are used in the Bible, we take them one way
Yes.
today, but we weren't living back then.
Right.
So
Right.
things like and I know this is like a thing that people always try to get the Catholics on is,
Yeah.
well, Jesus had siblings because he says brothers,
Right.
but that's not true. That's how they talked about like cousins, and that's
Yeah.
how they.
In fact, this can even be kind of a bonus one, because when he says, when Scripture says the brothers of Jesus or the sisters of Jesus, the word, the root word is adelphos in the plural, adelphi, which can mean blood brothers and sisters, but not necessarily can mean extended family.
Right.
Nephews, cousins, and even close friends. Like I could call, I'm a close friend of Simon, so I could refer to him as my brother.
Right.
Well, he's not my blood brother. He's not
Right.
part of my family, but he's a close friend.
Right.
So again, it's the understanding of the word as it was used back then, as opposed to how we may be using it now. That's a big key, a big key. Yes. Yeah.
So is that what you had to say about that?
Pretty
I
much.
don't want to move on yet.
No,
just-
that's pretty straightforward.
So
yeah.
what I have to say about that particular passage, thank you for explaining it, because that does make sense.
Yeah.
Is I feel like when you're saying, putting him first, obviously, and loving everybody else less, that's the thing is that, like my personal story is I love my family, but there's certain things that I have to remember. They're humans. They're going to do things that aren't okay or that aren't according to what we're supposed to be doing or whatever.
Right.
And I have to, I've had where people have said, I want you to step away from the Catholic Church
Mm.
and be with me. And I
Yeah.
told them no.
Yeah.
Because Jesus comes first.
Right.
And that's hard for
Mhm.
your family
It is.
to
Yeah.
hear. But the fact of the matter is that I have to have my priority pyramid, as I call it,
Right.
very solid, that
Mhm.
Jesus is at the top.
Yeah.
And then, it works its way down from there. So I think that's what he means here is
Yes.
he doesn't want me to hate my
No.
family,
He wants you to love them.
but I also know he doesn't want, first of all, me to have somebody give me an ultimatum like that.
Well, yeah.
Jesus will always be first. He will always come first. So I think that's how I feel about that passage. That makes sense to me.
Right.
If you substitute the word hate for,
Love less.
yes,
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
less.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So-
Because in Deuteronomy, in the Old Testament, and Matthew in the New Testament, the Gospels, we're told to love God with our whole heart, our
Right.
whole mind, our whole soul.
Right,
Love him first and foremost.
right.
And then from
Right.
that, yeah.
And personally, that just in itself, when I made that commitment, that gives me I feel so safe and secure in that he is number one.
Right.
I think it immediately makes me feel better, but over time, as I've really lived it,
Mhm.
it really helps me to know that he's the most important thing.
Right.
And I've told this story before, but back when I was married before in my old life,
Mhm.
and people used to say God was first, and then your husband, and then the children,
Right.
and so,
Right. Yeah.
and I would go, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would feel, I will never think that.
Yeah.
The children are first,
Right.
then my husband, and then
Yeah. It's kind of like,
and then God.
yeah. It's been reversed upside down.
No
Yeah.
concept of why people would say God was first
Yeah.
in their life. No concept. I mean, that's how far I've come.
Uh-huh.
Because I just look back at that. I don't know that girl. I don't know that person.
Right. Right.
Thank heaven.
So hate equals love less.
Okay.
So Jesus is not a hater,
Okay. So the next one I have is telling his disciples the Father is greater than he is.
Yeah, and we'll find this in John chapter 14, verse 28, where he's he's in the upper room. It's Holy Thursday night. He's involved in what's called the upper room discourse, where he is talking to his disciples, literally for the last time before he goes to the cross on Good Friday. And one of the statements he makes is, "The Father is greater than I." And there's been any number of people that have kind of seized on this verse, ones that wanted to try and deny the divinity of Christ and say, look, Jesus himself said he wasn't divine, he wasn't God, because he says the Father is greater than I. So if Jesus is God and the Father is God, how can the Father be greater than him? So a lot of people have seized on this, like I said, to try and deny the divinity of Christ, to try and deny Christ as God. And if you look at it, I mean, the words are the words. The Father is greater than I. So again, the key is, in what vein is he saying those words? Okay. And we know Jesus is a divine person with two natures, a human nature and a divine nature. And there are times, this is a time where Jesus is speaking from his humanity. He's speaking from his human nature. He's speaking as true man. So we're to read this as true man. The Father is greater than I. And that's a true statement,
Right.
because from the perspective of his humanity, the Father is greater than him, just like he's greater than all of us. So it's in, when Jesus, hate your father and mother. The key is understanding what the word hate means. The key here is understanding in what vein Jesus is speaking. And he's speaking from his humanity, his human nature. And in his humanity, the Father is greater than him as true man, as he is to all of us. So that, knowing the vein in which he's talking, he's not denying his divinity. In fact, there's any number of times in the Bible, especially in John, where Jesus does claim to be God. He does claim to be equal with God. Let me give you, I jotted a couple of them down. John 10, I and the Father are one. John 5, my Father has been working until now, and I have been working. John 14, he tells Thomas, he who has seen me has seen the Father. Okay. John 14 again, let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. And then John 17, and now, Father, glorify me together with yourself, with which I had with you before the world began. So in John, there are any number of passages where Jesus does, rightly so, because he is, claim to be God, equality with God. So he's not denying his divinity by saying this. He's talking as true man, which would be true for all of us.
Well, and I think that's the thing, obviously, about Jesus is he was sent to the earth to be more, in my opinion, to be more, people could wrap their mind around him more because he's actually in front of them. Now, it doesn't mean they immediately believed in him and believed what he was saying. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying he came kind of to meet people where they were, sort of a thing, because God, the Father, is such like a, mysterious, mystical
Well,
thing.
being pure spirit,
Yeah.
he's invisible.
Yeah.
So a visual manifestation of God, that's Jesus's
Right.
humanity. Yeah.
So then when he comes, there's time, it depends on what he's saying and what he's talking, but the overall thing is always he and the Father are one.
Yes.
But I always look at it as there's God the Father, Jesus is God, and there's the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I mean, I can see why he's saying that, but it does sound, confusing.
It
Again,
does.
he's confusing sometimes.
And then there's another instance that people sees in very similar to this, and it's in the Olivet Discourse where he and his disciples are on the Mount of Olives and they're looking across at the temple. And it's at nighttime and the temple looks splendid. It's all lit up, right? And the disciples say, wow, they look at they say, oh, isn't that the temple grand? Isn't it glorious? And Jesus says there's going to come a time where one stone will not be on the other. There's going to come a time where the temple's destroyed,
Right.
right? And the disciples in this and say, well, when is this going to be? And Jesus says, no one knows, not the angels, not even the Son, but only the Father. So people say, wait a second. How can Jesus say he doesn't know when the end of time is if he's God? So him saying he doesn't know, the Son doesn't know, again, is he disclaiming his divinity? Is he saying he's not God? And the case is no. In that case, when he says nobody knows, not the angels, not even the Son, again, he's talking in reference to his humanity, his human nature as true man. And as true man, he doesn't know when the last day is any more than we do. So the key is, in what vein, from what nature is Jesus talking?
Well, and it's also, if you even look at when he was crucified as a man.
Yes.
He died, his human body died,
Right.
but God
did not die.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing is like,
Right. Yeah.
okay, so awesome.
Okay.
Okay, so
So we doing good?
we're doing good.
Okay.
So we're going to take a quick break. But before we do that, the commercial you're about to watch is for our pilgrimage to Italy in September. Fresh Catholic, this girl here, and Father Matthew Miguel are going to go to Italy for the Jubilee, which is so exciting. So don't skip past that commercial. Watch it. Look at the beautiful scenery and think, oh my gosh, I could picture myself there. I better go to freshcatholic.com, put down my deposit, and sign up for that trip. And we get to meet the new Pope.
That's right. Leo the 14th.
Oh, Leo the 14th.
Yes.
So the deadline is coming up the end of June for sign up. So please, please, please come with us. We really want you to come. So watch that commercial and Charles and I will be right back. Have you ever wanted to witness the miraculous and walk where saints have walked? This is your chance. Join me, Lori Balderas, host of Fresh Catholic Podcast, and Father Matthew Miguel, as we walk with you through Italy's most sacred sites. From the Eucharistic miracles of Lanciano and Orvieto to the peace of Assisi, your heart will be transformed by these extraordinary moments of grace. You'll walk the hallowed streets of Rome, step into the history of the Vatican, and witness the places where faith has flourished for centuries. Each stop deepens your journey. Each miracle renews your soul. We invite you to join us on an unforgettable, life-changing experience.
Join us and let your faith come alive in Italy.
And we're back. Okay, Charles,
Okay.
here's a tricky one.
Okay.
When Jesus calls Peter Satan
Yes.
to his face, another incredibly strong word.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough to call Satan Satan,
Yeah.
and then to call maybe somebody you don't care for Satan.
Which
But when you're calling somebody who you love,
Yeah.
know, who's super close with you
Yeah.
every day, who follows you, and you call him, that must have been very jarring, especially since, and I'm sure you're going to tell us what happened, but especially at the point where Simon Peter is actually trying to be supportive of Jesus.
Yeah.
What he's saying.
Yeah.
He's not saying something mean.
No, not at all. Not at all. Which
He's
makes it
just
even more
like,
curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which even makes it more curious.
so-
Because again, just like, with, hate your father and mother, brother and sister, it's like, really, Jesus? You're calling Peter one of your handpicked 12 disciples, the head of the disciples, the one you being God already know you're going to build your church on, who's going to be the first pope. You're calling him, of all things, Satan? Really, Jesus? That sounds harsh. It sounds very un-Jesus-like. Again, it doesn't sound like the Jesus I know. So what is your thing?
What you talking about?
Yeah, okay. And again, let's provide some context because that'll help us understand, because again, the words are the words. Jesus said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." So he did, reference Satan's name, right? But again, in what vein was he doing this? What was his meaning? And for this, the key is the context, because Jesus is trying to explain to his disciples, which they don't fully understand, and which they're pushing back against, is that there's going to come a time, and it's coming up soon, where he's going to be rejected, mocked, persecuted, scourged, and crucified, and he's going to die. That's going to happen. That time is going to come, and it's, every day it's coming closer and closer and closer. And the disciples couldn't imagine that happening, couldn't understand why that would happen, couldn't understand how that fits into the overall plan, and didn't want to believe it. It's like don't say no, stop talking, don't say anything, right? And Peter, and one of the reasons I love Peter is he's they're all ordinary men, obviously, because they're flesh and blood. But Peter, really so, because so many times he'll blurt something out, or he'll put his foot in his mouth, or he'll do something, and you go, "Really, Peter?" And this is one of the examples of it, because after Jesus is explaining how the Son of Man will go, which is kind of the wording Jesus used, Peter says, "God forbid that should happen to you, Jesus." In essence saying, no, Jesus, that's not going to happen. That won't happen. That's not how it's going to play out. Let me tell you how it's going to play out, right? And so Peter is kind of rebuking Jesus for telling him his Father's plan, right? And Jesus then rebukes Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Now, here's the key. The word Satan, the name Satan, because that's not his given name is Lucifer. He's known in Scripture, and we call him Satan. And he's given the name Satan because Satan comes from the word Satan, and Satan means adversary. And of course, the devil is the adversary of Jesus, right? So when Jesus calls Peter Satan, keeping in mind that the name Satan, the word Satan means adversary, we can read it so as to better understand it as Jesus saying, "Peter, get behind me, because you're being my adversary, because I just told you what the Father's plan is for me. You are saying that's not the way it's going to go. So in kind of rebuking the Father's plan, you are being an adversary to this plan. You are being adversarial in your rebuking of what I just told you and how it's going to play out."
Right.
So if we think of the word Satan as adversary, what Jesus is getting across to Peter is, you saying this is not how it's going to play out, you are being an adversary. You are being adversarial. So
Well,
it's in that vein.
I feel like that's then Jesus speaking to us all the time, because we're adversaries of Jesus when we aren't faithful,
When we sin.
when we and also when we, you know, when we say we want to do the Father's will, but we,
Yeah.
we do say, well, Lord, see it my way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I find myself all the time saying, Lord, I would really like XYZ,
Mm.
but it's your will. And I surrender to your will. Like I try to do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, this is to all of us. We're
Yeah.
all an adversary to the Lord when we don't want to surrender
Yeah,
to
which
his
means
will.
Satan-like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
we're
what Jesus is
very,
getting to.
we're all human
Right.
and we all would like things our way.
Yeah.
But, obviously one of the biggest lessons is, God does know the right thing. He knows what the plan, because he knows the whole plan
Oh,
for
yeah.
our life.
Yeah.
So we're the ones, where we get off track. Like I always say, we go off in the weeds and he's over on the path, just going, I'm over here, guys.
Yeah.
Come on over here. I know where you're supposed to go. And I have a flashlight. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's speaking to us when we're being adversarial
Yeah. Yeah.
to the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Peter's saying, not your will or the Father's will. This is my will. And my will is that you don't be persecuted. You don't be
Right.
rejected. You don't suffer. You don't die.
Right.
And Jesus is saying, no, in doing that, you're taking an adversarial position. You're being an adversary. You're being a Satan.
Well, and also Jesus, also Peter was being very human in the fact that, like I said, he loved Jesus. He doesn't want to hear the angel. That's going to happen.
Right.
So he's trying to think, he's trying to talk to him and say, God, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Yeah, he's rebuking Jesus,
Not
but he's doing it out of love.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to see Jesus rejected and
No.
persecuted and scourged and
Right.
killed, specifically by crucifixion. Yeah.
Right.
So it's in that vein.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one. When Jesus, I don't know, does he really do this? I have to think about this.
Okay.
When he rebukes Martha for serving, oh yeah, I guess he does. Never mind. I don't know why I'm questioning you. I was just trying to put my mind around. When Jesus rebukes Martha for serving while praising Mary for sitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I struggle with this one, and I'll tell you why after you explain it.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, it's we can find this in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. And by the way, this event, the Martha and Mary event where Jesus rebukes Martha, is only found in one gospel, and it's only found in Luke. And let's set the setting, is because that helps explain how we are to understand this. He's in Bethany. Bethany is the whole, Martha and Mary are sisters, and Lazarus is their brother. And they all three lived in a home in Bethany, okay, which is just outside of Jerusalem. So, and Jesus would go there often to visit them. And in fact, during Holy Week, on Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night, after spending the day in Jerusalem, he would go back to Bethany and spend the night at Martha, Mary, and Lazarus's house.
And
So that's where this is
learned
set.
that? You know where I learned that tidbit of information?
Where did you learn that?
On the Charles
Ah,
Merritt leak series.
yeah, shameless plug there.
I'm always
So you've been listening, okay?
Yes.
So anyway, so that's where this is happening. So he's visiting. Long story short, he's visiting the home of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Now, in the first century, again, goes to properly understanding this. In the first century, hospitality was everything. I mean, that was huge. When you were hosting somebody, okay, you had to. Practice hospitality to the max, to the point of if you didn't, you were ostracized. So hospitality was critical. So when he visits Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, Martha is providing hospitality. She is kind of running around and she's getting everything together and she's serving Jesus. So with that in place, this is where this makes the curiosity of Jesus' statement, before we understand it, even more interesting because not only is he rebuking Martha, seemingly for serving him, if we add the hospitality component in, he's rebuking Martha, seemingly, for doing something that was hugely critical in the first century, providing hospitality. So that makes it even more curious. So we say, well, why would Jesus rebuke Martha for doing something that in that culture at that time had to be done? Okay. Well, the answer lies in what Jesus actually says to her. Because, yes, it seems like he's rebuking her. And yes, in fact, he is rebuking her. But he's not rebuking her for providing hospitality. Well, if he's not rebuking her for providing hospitality, what is he rebuking her for? So let's take a look at Jesus's actual words. Okay, he says, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious about many things. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." Okay. Martha, Martha, and here's the key word, you are anxious about many things. So what he's rebuking her for is that in providing hospitality, okay? Because again, this is Jesus. This is Jesus coming into her. Jesus is coming into her presence. She's in the presence of Jesus, right? Um, and she's another different translations. Some translations render it anxious. Other translations render it distracted. And whether it's anxious or distracted, what Jesus is rebuking her for is not the serving per se. It's not the hospitality per se, but it's that she's so distracted by the hospitality that she's kind of taking her eye off the ball, so to speak. And the ball is this is Jesus in her house, you know? And the word that's used for distracted, and this is another key, is being pulled away from something. The root word for the word that's used for distracted here is being pulled away. So if we can kind of have a modern example where let's say that um, rather than take a situation and rather than being present to that person in that moment, which is what you should be, you get distracted or pulled away by something else. Example, let's say you and I are having lunch, right? And I've got my phone on the table, right? And we're having lunch. It's the present moment. You're here, we're talking, and my phone rings, right? And I'm distracted by it. So much so that I'm literally pulled away from what I should be involved in at the present time, and I'm pulled to something I shouldn't be pulled to. Okay. So just like the phone is not in and of itself is not the problem, me allowing myself to be distracted by it when I should be in the present moment with the present person. So the serving in itself is not the problem, it's pulling her away. It's distracting her from being in the present moment, which is being with Jesus, which Mary was.
Right.
So the rebuking is not the serving or the hospitality per se. It's allowing herself to be distracted and pulled away and anxious by it, where she's not in the present moment with the present person, which is Jesus.
Right.
So that's what he's rebuking her for.
Right. And the thing I was going to say is, so I have been head of hospitality for different organizations.
There you go.
I love to serve people. I love to serve at the church in many ways. I'm always running around doing something,
Yeah.
and
And she is, boy, I'll tell you, she's all over the
I'm
place.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel very needed and necessary, and it makes me happy to, that's how I like to serve. But lately, just in the past few months, I've taken a little bit of a step back, maybe not a step back far enough for Simon Balderas' liking, because I know he likes me to sometimes just sit in mass with him and not be doing my tasks. But for the past few months, I have taken a back seat to some of the service I was doing at the church so that I can worship. Because I was finding that I was going to mass to serve, but I wasn't getting to pray. I wasn't getting to worship. I wasn't getting to focus.
Yeah.
I felt like I would get there and leave, and I didn't really have any time with Jesus. And
You were being pulled away.
I was.
That's-
And as much as I love it, and I think that's a huge value when
Oh, yeah.
somebody serves the church
Yes.
or serves others, I feel that's a very needed and necessary thing at home and at church. But, you know, if you are just too distracted, your relationship is going to suffer. It's the same thing like this analogy you're saying with having a lunch or something with someone, and you should be enjoying that time.
Right.
The phone can wait,
Yeah.
whoever can wait. The quality of what you're trying to do is just immediately diminished
Yeah.
because you're not giving it. Now, especially with our Lord,
Yeah.
you do need to be focused on him, and that's one of the beautiful things about adoration, in my opinion, is that I mean, hopefully people can go, you do stop everything. People aren't skittering around doing tasks. They're not serving. Everybody is stopped. They're quiet.
Yeah.
They're praying. They're,
Mm.
praying to the Blessed Sacrament and to Jesus. And it's very focused.
Yeah.
And it's very beautiful.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things I truly love about the Catholic faith. Now, I don't know if other faiths do that. I don't know all other faiths and about them. I just know my experience is that's one reason I love adoration so much, because I can
Yeah.
block
Yeah.
everything else out. It's very fixated. But, you know, I think what you're saying is it's okay that Martha was serving
Yes.
and
Yeah.
doing all that. And the way he says it is in such a way of, Martha, Martha, you're being anxious, but
Right.
great that you're doing that, but then also focus on me, because you're missing out. She's
Right.
missing out.
Yeah. 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 Mary has chosen the better part. Yeah. And a lot of people interpret this, and this is also in play here about the balance between,
Balance.
in the spiritual life, between activity and contemplation, if you will,
Yes.
that you have to have the proper balance.
I was just going to say balance,
Yeah.
because that is so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if people aren't serving the church or serving at their home or serving at work or wherever they're serving people and helping people,
Mhm.
if you don't do that, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
can't be, and this is my tendency, is I'll keep going. I'll
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
serving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll keep serving and
Yeah.
serving and serving. And then I've missed out on something, or I,
Mhm.
haven't got the experience that I would like.
Right.
And it's really important that you serve,
Yeah.
but then you take the time to worship
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And to pray.
and to
Right.
pray
Right.
and to really focus on prayer. I'm struggling right now that I am finding that my prayer isn't as serious as I would like it to be. And I'm a schedule girl. And so I'm thinking about scheduling in. Now, this is going to sound funny because I spend
Okay.
like 3 hours in the morning praying as I'm getting.
3 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, this is why I wake up at 3:30 in the morning.
Boy.
Is while I'm getting ready, I'm taking my time. How is not that? No, but I'm praying. I'm praying the rosary. I'm praying for
Right,
all
as
these
you're-
different
yeah,
people
yeah.
as I'm doing this.
Right.
And I'm taking the time to do that because I have a lot of praying I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling like that's great,
Mhm.
except it would almost be better if I allotted a shorter period of time where I'm just in
Right.
prayer,
Yeah.
where I'm not doing things while I'm praying.
Right.
I'm a multitasker.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's part of the problem here.
Yeah.
Is I'm
Very human.
doing and
You know? Yeah.
I'm being Mary and Martha at the
Yeah.
same time. But but what I'm thinking now is that I want to try not like doing that, but having just this complete prayer time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that that's quality over quantity.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
to begin your day with it, so you're in a
Yeah.
proper state of mind that the first thing you
Right.
do is spend time with our Lord.
And that's why I think daily mass is so important, that people should try to go to daily mass,
Yeah.
because it does start your day off
It
on such
does.
a good foot.
Yeah, yeah, and a saying that I've always liked, and because again, I'm involved in a lot of things. I'm constantly on the go. My schedule is full, and a saying that I like that I once heard, and I have to remind myself of it because we're humans, right? We have human nature, right? Is don't, in doing the work of the Lord, don't forget about the Lord of the work. Let me say that again. In doing the work of the Lord, the activity, being Martha, don't forget the Lord of the work,
Mm.
the contemplative part, the prayerful part, the merely part. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, Christianity, as I like to say, it's, if at the end of the day, it's about a relationship with Jesus. It's relational. It's not a checklist. It's not a
Right.
bunch of rules or regular. I mean, it involves things that, we have to do and avoid, but that's not its essence. Its essence is relational. You have to have a relationship with Jesus. Because he has a relationship with you, have to have a relationship with him. So it's relational. And you can get so busy doing things for him that you're not having a relationship with him. And those are two completely different things,
Right.
and that is what Jesus is getting to. That's what he's kind of cautioning, if you will, Martha about.
Right.
It's the activity's not in and of itself is not the problem. The serving's not the problem. The hospitality's not the problem. You have to do those things,
Right.
okay? But you don't want to do them at the expense
Right.
that they distract you, that you're so anxious about doing them that you get distracted from what's really important, which is what Mary is doing, spending time with me. And that's why he calls what Mary's doing the better part. He's not saying serving is bad,
Right.
but what Mary's, because again, God has to be first.
Right.
And then everything has to flow from that and back to that.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to take another short break, and when we come back, we're going to do a bonus question.
No, okay. What the heck? Sure. All right. The boss has spoken.
So we'll be right back. Let me tell you about all things Fresh Catholic, so buckle up. We have a podcast with weekly topic episodes and Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily Mass readings, on all platforms and YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, rate, and review. That would really help. Our website, freshcatholic.com, has an online store with merchandise and coffee, a blog, comics, info about our pilgrimage to Italy in September of this Jubilee year, and Fresh Catholic courses with Educator Charles Merritt, including the Hail Mary, the Our Father, Sin, Sacraments and Grace, Advent, Angels, and Virtues. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh Catholic with short videos every day. Email me at lori@freshcatholic.com. I'd love to hear from you. And please consider becoming a Patreon or sponsor to help support our mission of drawing people to the faith or back to the faith. Phew! Spread the word and join the fun. Thanks so much. Bye. And we're back. So I'm laughing because I said we have a bonus question. Charles is all, I don't know if I have an answer for it. I mean, okay. Well,
No,
putting you on the spot. Let's see here.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's see.
So this one, I mean, I might not even ask it correctly, but let's just see what we do here.
Oh, it's your bonus.
So I know. Okay. So in the Beatitudes,
Right.
the Beatitudes in themselves, as wonderful and amazing as they are, they can be very confusing because Jesus is saying, woe to those, or woe to this person that for, and he's giving a list of things.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the list of things that he's saying, woe to you if you have this, they're typically things that you would want, that you think are a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
And he's saying, oh no, that's not good. And you're thinking,
He's pronouncing woes on them.
yes, woes.
Yeah.
Woes, meaning bad. Like, like woe to you.
Yes.
That's bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we wrap our mind around that? Because that's confusing, because you're thinking, am I not allowed to, because we do like to follow the rules of the Lord. So it's like, he says, like, so give me an example of some of the Beatitudes where you say, woe to you for this.
Okay. Well, the Beatitudes, we can find them recorded in two of the Gospels, Matthew and Luke. And Luke records Jesus not only giving, blessed are you, the blessings, but Luke records Jesus giving some woe. So we find the woes in Luke's recording of the Beatitudes rather than Matthew's. And this is another case, like with all of these, going, really, Jesus? Am I hearing him correctly? Is he really saying that? That doesn't sound like something Jesus would say. That doesn't make sense. Because in Luke's recording, when Jesus gives them the woes, he says, woe to you who are rich. Woe to you who are filled. Woe to you who others speak well of you. Okay? Woe to you that laugh. And we're saying, wait, so there's something wrong with being rich. There's something wrong with being filled after having a good meal. There's something wrong with laughing. There's something wrong with people appreciating you and your reputation being good. Is there something wrong with those things? Because Jesus is pronouncing woes on them. So what's going on here? And again, we've got to kind of just properly understand the vein in which he's doing it. Okay. Because again, he's giving these Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are part of the Sermon on the Mount, and he's giving them to the people. And this is first century. And a lot of those people are living in conditions where they are poor. They are maybe not eating as much as they need to, et cetera, where there's a lot of, there's maybe not much happiness, right? So when Jesus says that to those people, what he's really saying is, look, okay, these are some of the things, being rich, being well-fed, laughing a lot. These are some of the things that on an earthly and human level, you wish you were experiencing, but you're not, okay? But again, what Jesus is doing is he's cautioning them. He's saying, look, before you wish for these things, before you rue the fact that you don't have them, let me caution you, because they can be dangerous. Because, if you're rich, if you're well-fed, it could, not necessarily will, but it could lead you to being very prideful, very arrogant, feeling like, I'm in control. I'm totally self-sustaining. I can do it all on my own. And here's the key: I don't really need God. That I find my security and safety in my richness and my possessions and what people, people saying all these good things about me. I find my safety and security in my good reputation. And again, in and of themselves, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but they can be dangerous in that they can lead you to feeling you don't need God.
Right.
So even though, yes, on an earthly level, people, he's saying, in essence, that you would like to have these things, that you maybe want these things, and you currently don't have them, let me caution you that there are dangers to them.
Right.
Okay.
And that's very, very
in terms of your eternal salvation,
Right.
your eternal destiny, not just a blip of time you're here on earth.
Well, and that's the thing is when, we live in a world where people like a lot of superficial things or, to get those things. Sometimes there's a lot of sin going on to get the things that you
Right.
desire.
Yeah.
And then when you make other things God
Yeah.
in your life, or in other words, like something you idolize, something you're fixated on, something you obsess over, all those things, I can see why it's woe to you because, like, I know there's a thing where people will say, well, this person over here has everything and they're not suffering at all. And,
Yeah.
but they're not even going to church. They don't believe in God and they have everything. But then you find out later, those people, 9.5 times out of 10, who have everything allegedly and don't have God in their life, bad things happen because their priorities, their priority pyramid is the opposite way.
Right.
And it seems like everything's fine, but Satan likes to do that. He likes to pull you in by giving you things you want.
Yeah, the
And
nice
then he's
shiny
gotcha.
objects. Yeah.
Then he's
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's like Jesus saying that makes sense because he knows.
Right.
Like that they're going to make those things idols or they're going to put way too
Or there is at least a
Listen.
danger of them doing that.
Yeah.
So we'll think, be careful what you wish for, you
Right.
just may get it. And he's just like he's telling Martha, kind of in the same vein, he's telling Martha, look, the serving is not in and of itself is not the issue. It's, let me caution you, there's a danger
Right.
in that it'll distract you
Right.
from what's really important, from
Right.
the better part. Same thing he's saying here. He's not saying, wealth and a good reputation and having a full stomach, all those other laughing. In and of themselves, they're not wrong. But again, just like he's cautioning Martha, he's cautioning the people in these Beatitudes, be careful,
Right.
because they could be dangerous in that. They could lead you, again, they could distract you, they could lead you away from me. So just like the danger for Martha was her serving, leading her away from him, the danger of having all these things he's telling the people is they could lead you away from me
Right. And they
and away from the things
mostly
that you
do.
have to focus on. Yeah.
And they
yeah.
mostly do.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. It's like a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people, if they are wealthy, they'll use their wealth for maybe not the best things or
Yeah.
the most important things or things that could help others or whatever. They're just, again, very superficial or very frivolous or things
Right.
like that.
They're great privileges. And with them, we got to understand there's a great responsibility, because at the end of the day, whatever I have, whatever wealth and possessions and health I have, whatever longevity of life I have, is due to God.
Right.
God, I'm just a steward of it. And my responsibility as a steward is to use them rightly.
Right.
And that's a big responsibility. And it's a responsibility that I'm going to have to account for on the day of my particular judgment.
Right.
So it's kind of a cautionary tale to the people, just like it was a cautionary tale to Martha.
Right.
These things are good in and of themselves, but you got to be careful, because used wrongly, they could be dangerous. And
Right.
It could be dangerous to what's really important, which is your eternal salvation, your eternal destiny.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was a goodie. I learned all that. That's
Okay.
good. Because I do think people wonder sometimes about what Jesus is saying, and they're like, wait a minute.
And there's lots more. We just picked 5. In
Yeah.
fact, maybe a
there might
sequel
be a part 2 coming up. Who knows?
Yeah.
Look at it.
But there's a lot more.
Anyway, I think that was really good, and I do want to promote that you did a little teaser about it, but we do have the 10 Commandments
Yes.
series coming up,
Yes.
which I think is going to be amazing.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I would like to apologize to Mary Deacon Phil's wife, because she asked me a long time ago, do you think Charles will do the 10 Commandments series on your podcast? And I said, no. I said, no, I don't think so. I didn't think you were. And then, so sorry.
Let's change this out.
Sorry, Mary. So, I know Mary listens, so sorry, Mary. Anyway, but I'm excited about that because I've been told by Simon Balderas, our producer,
Okay.
that you really go deep
Oh, yeah.
into it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just the 10 Commandments that everybody thinks they know, where it's just like, thou shalt not kill. That's it. Bye.
Yeah, I haven't killed anybody lately. I'm good
Yeah.
with that commandment. Yeah.
But they kind of have many branches.
They
to
go,
each
they
one.
they got depth and breadth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's important because we are all sinners.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. We do, as Catholics especially, have these guidelines of the 10 Commandments, and we should be following them. But we do need to be really aware of what each one entails.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'm not saying, it's hard to master these things, but we all have to try.
Yeah.
And we all have to know what we're dealing with, because it's like, just like when you go get a driver's license, you don't automatically get behind the car and just start driving and go, I don't know what that hexagon red thing is over there. I don't know why we have that. What does the green light mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to know the rules that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And then if you run the red light, then that's your fault because you knew what the rule was and you did it anyway.
Yep.
So, I think it's really important because, I know I struggle with things every day.
Oh, yeah.
We all do.
Yeah. Join the
So
club.
I think, it is really good to have that. And so I'm excited for that series. I know that
Good.
coming
I'm glad.
soon.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And so anyway, Charles, it's been a delight as usual.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, it has.
Nice having you here. He's been here all day.
And fresh as a daisy. Well, maybe not.
It's, yeah, Fresh Catholic. Anyway, thank you for coming, Charles.
Well, thank you for having me on after such a long absence. Hopefully your audience agrees.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And go to our website, freshcatholic.com. Check everything out there. Sign up for that pilgrimage. I want you to come with us. We're going to have just an amazing, blessed time. And I can't wait. It's a trip of a lifetime for me. So please sign up. And thank you for coming today. Thank you. Love you. Bye.